Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of Aaron Talks about Korean dramas. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about a Korean Odyssey. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the summary right now. So 25 years ago, Mi and Gong met when she was a child. He ended up tricking her into releasing him when she went to retrieve a fan for Mawang. So as part of the deal into having her release him, he had promised to always protect her whenever she called his name. But obviously being a capricious being, he had no intention of keeping his end of the promise. So after she'd released him, he took the memory of his name so that he wouldn't be upheld by this promise. And then he disappeared. Fast forward to 2017, Gong and Ma Wang are in conflict with each other while they look for the true light in a dark world where evil thrives. So Gong and Sun Mi meet again by happenstance, and they end up working together to save the world. So you have the show's genre is horror, comedy, fantasy, and romance. It ran from December 2017 to March 2018. It had 20 episodes, and each episode was about an hour and 20 minutes long. So I'm just going to stop right now if you don't want any spoilers, because I'm going to be talking about the characters now, and there's going to be spoilers in there. So I would recommend you stop watching right now if you don't want spoilers. So you have Lee Seung-gi as Sun Gong, whose character is based on Sun Woo-kang, the Monkey King. He's a very powerful and immortal being that was exiled to the human realm and had his power sealed due to his mischievous and prideful nature. After tricking Seon-mi as a child into releasing him, he disappeared and wasn't reunited with her until many years later. In which case they end up working together because of circumstance, and eventually she becomes the love of his life. So Sun Woo-kang is the monkey god, is known as the Chinese trickster god, and was born from a magical rock. He was thrown out of the Jade Emperor's court for impertinence, but eventually achieved enlightenment. So before he achieved enlightenment, his true form was that of a naked macaque, or he was often seen in the form of a naked macaque. You have Chu Sung-won as Wu Hui, sorry if I mispronounced that, or Wu Ma Wang. And his character is based on the Bull Demon King. He's the CEO of Lucifer Entertainment and is a charismatic businessman. He and Sun Gong have a bad history, and they're more like frenemies, to be honest, that tolerate each other. Their relationship is quite hilarious. So Ma Wang seeks to become a deity and collect points in order to change the fate of the woman he loves. So the character that he's based on, the Bull Demon King's true form, is that of a white bull. And you see this referenced by the white bull statue in Ma Wang's apartment or penthouse. He is married to Princess Ironfan, and they have one son, Red Boy. Now their history is a bit complicated. So she got pregnant, and I don't think she was supposed to get pregnant. Or when she did get pregnant, she went against nature by trying to save her child by feeding him the souls of human children. And of course, she got caught, and her punishment to get caught was to endure 10 mortal incarnations. And so her mortal fate was quite tragic, and that she ended up dying a pretty tragic fate in every lifetime. It's been about 1,000 years, and she hasn't gone through all her incarnations. So he's trying to take over the rest of her punishment, I think. So obviously, like, as part of her punishment, she doesn't know that her son's still alive, and he didn't know that he's a father. Their son obviously been raised without knowing who his parents are. Basically, So Mawang ends up meeting his son in this episode, and although he doesn't know who he is originally, he does figure it out later on, and he can't really say he's his father, so he ends up kind of taking over, kind of like becoming a father figure without actually admitting he's actually his dad. You have Oh Yoon Seo as Jin Seon Mi, and her other name is Sam Jang, who is basically the one who will save the world. She's a CEO of a real estate company that sells houses with notoriously bad luck, aka evil spirits. As a child, she was often ostracized because she saw ghosts. And obviously the other kids don't know she can see ghosts, so they often see her acting in strange ways, and that scares them. So obviously they don't want to be her friend. And she's considered to be quite weird. She meets Ma Wang when he asks her to retrieve a fan from where Sun Ogong is imprisoned. And when she enters, Sun Ogong interests her into releasing him. After releasing him, he vanishes, and they don't meet again until many years later. They meet again by chance, ended up working together because of circumstance, and eventually he becomes the love of her life. You have Lee Hong-gi as PK, or Geo Pel Guy. He's a star of Lucifer Entertainment. He has the power to seduce women and suck their life force out of them, and he's a boar demon. You have Jang Guan as Yoon Dae Sik. He's the CEO of Emsun Mobile, a mobile manufacturing company. So I didn't realize he was actually a main character. I've always thought he was just a side character, because I feel like there are other characters who actually get more screen time than he does. So I kind of had to double check twice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the side characters, just because they're quite kind of integral to the story, and they appear a lot alongside the main characters. So you have Lee Se-young. She's the same actress who later plays Kim Do-sik, Im Dok, in The Red Sleeve, probably saying her name, or Lady Yubin. She plays Jung Se-ra, Zombie, Jin Buja, Richie, and Asunyo. Are her multiple different names. She was an idol group trainee under Woo Hyu's agency. She's actually a woman also who lives in a dead zombie body that is rotting. And in later episodes, she becomes possessed by an evil spirit named Asunyo, who was a priestess for the king 1,000 years ago, and now seeks to marry Sun Ogong for power and love. Although I don't think it's really love, because she's evil. You have Kim Ji-soo as Cha Yoon, or Seo Hyun-hee, also Na Chal-neo. She's based on Princess Ironfan, who is Ma Wang's wife and first love, or who was first love, who's serving her punishment for stealing human children's souls for her child. You have Song Hyuk as General Winter and Summer Fairy. They're two spirits who inhabit the same body, whereby General Winter is Sun Ogong's advisor who owns an ice cream shop by day, and Summer Fairy is a warm and social lady who owns a cocktail shop in the night, and often offers listening ear to the demons as well as Samjang Sunmi. You have Yoon Bora as Alice, okay, wrong, based on White Dragon Horse. She's the top star in Woo Hee's agency, and she unwittingly becomes possessed by the Jade Dragon, the second son of one of the 4 Dragon Kings. You also have Jung Jae-won as Hong Hui, who's based on Hong Hui-her, as the mysterious youth who's also the grandson of a peddler. He's actually Mo Wong's son. So while you might wonder why I went into some of the side characters, I talk about them in my thoughts. So I thought that that would be a good idea to add them into the characters that I talk about. My thoughts is it's another great series by the Hong sisters. They also did The Master's Son, which I'll be talking about in a later episode, even though I did watch that one first. This is one of my favorites and is in my top 5. I've watched it at least twice, even though the ending is sad. And I always kind of have to laugh because I'm always like, oh, I hate sad movies. I hate sad TV shows. I'm never going to watch them. And then I end up watching them and it becomes one of my favorites. I think one of the reasons why I can watch it is because it's quite lighthearted. Like, yeah, it has a sad ending. Kind of. It's quite lighthearted. Most of the characters are really funny. And at the end, even though it's sad, Sun Gong actually does go to the underworld to find her. So I guess it's kind of bittersweet because, you know, they'll eventually be reunited. So the relationship between Sun Gong and Ma Wang is hilarious. Even though they're not exactly friends, Sun Gong basically lives in Ma Wang's penthouse, and Ma Wang does very little, I think, to try and encourage him to leave, and just kind of puts up with his disrespectful behavior. They basically have a silent war going on over Gong's treatment and lack of respect of Ma Wang's bull statue. So whenever Sun Gong comes over, he always like doesn't hang up his coat properly on a coat hook or in the closet. He always just kind of like flings it carelessly over Ma Wang's bull statue or like on the horns. And it's just absolutely hilarious because it drives Ma Wang crazy. And of course, Sun Gong knows it drives Ma Wang crazy, and that's why he does it. And I don't think Ma Wang really retaliates too hard. I think at one point he does like do something to the monkey statue, but for the most part, he just puts up with Sun Gong's treatment of his statue. So Sun Gong is arrogant as any god would be. He's a bit of a jerk and he's kind of capricious by nature, and which I guess you would expect from a trickster god. He originally makes a promise to Sung Mi as a child to protect her whenever she calls his name, but of course he recants that by stealing the memory of his name, so she can't remember what his name is to call him. And then he just like does that and disappears because he has no intention of upholding his side of the bargain. They meet again many years later by happenstance. She basically is in a car that her employee is driving, and she sees him crossing the street. So she like, to the surprise of her employee, she like jumps out of the car and runs after him. And she runs into a square and is like looking around for him. And he's actually like, there's like a walkway that you can like go up some stairs. And so I think you can go up some stairs, or he can fly. So he might have just flew up there. I don't know. But anyway, she's looking around and he's like watching her look for him. So they eventually end up working together when it becomes clear that there's an ominous force that will be unleashed into the world, and they are the only ones who can stop it. And that's where it becomes quite tragic, because there's some talk that this wasn't really, I can't quite remember, or I get kind of confused because it goes back and forth whether this was always meant to be her fate or whether this only became her fate as a punishment for releasing him from his prison. So her tragic fate is like basically his fault in the first place, because he was kind of selfish and tricked her into releasing him without thinking of consequences. And so she basically has to die to save the world. And originally, there's only a special sword that can kill her, I think, in order to save the world. And he originally is the one that's supposed to wield it. But originally, like, she's going to fight against her fate, but then she ends up agreeing to it, as long as he's not the one to kill her, because she's like, it'll basically just destroy him. And her death destroys him anyway, but it would have been like so much worse if he had to remember that he was the one who killed his love. And so, yeah. So I honestly love all the characters. They're all quirky and funny in their own way. I think the only part I didn't like is what happened to Lee Se-young's character, Jin Buja. So it's basically Sin-mi's blood is special. And so like when she cuts herself and evil spirits get a whiff of her blood, they're attracted to her. And so at one point, in order to save her, Sonogong like sends her blood away from her so that the evil spirits will like go away and stop attacking her. And so her blood ends up drifting towards a young woman who's actually just been killed through a hit and run. And the person who killed her is like a very powerful person. And so he basically hires these two goons to like take care of her body, or his employees or whatever. And so her blood ends up like drifting down and like, I guess I wouldn't say inhaled because she's not breathing, but like seeps into her body, and she ends up rising as the undead. And so originally when she arises, she's like, doesn't know who she is. She has no memory of what happened. Like, she knows she's dead, obviously. And so eventually her body starts rotting, so it makes it kind of funny. So she ends up having to go to a winter fairy who ends up permanently keeping her cold so that to stop the rot. But yeah, so it's kind of funny because originally they're trying to figure out ways to stop her from rotting. So they keep like turning down the temperature in Ma Wong's penthouse. So like everybody else is freezing except for her. Or like at one point, Sonogong opens the fridge and she's like, or the freezer, and she's like in there. Because like, yeah, because she has to be kept cold and to stop the decomposition. So it's kind of funny. But I think the one thing that really bugs me is that I feel like the plot of her being possessed by an ancient 1,000-year-old priestess is completely unnecessary. And I felt like it was just kind of forgotten about, or it doesn't contribute much to the story as far as I'm concerned. And it's honestly just kind of forgotten about. Like, she becomes possessed, and basically I think at one point before she disappears, she's told that she has to like release from her body, because if she doesn't release before she's completely possessed, then there will be no saving her soul, basically. And so then I feel like that's just kind of forgotten about until the end, when the evil priestess basically just tells PK that, you know, that she released herself or whatever before she completely possessed her body. And I thought that was quite sad, considering that, you know, she had been murdered, and the person who murdered her never like got any justice, I feel like, from what I can remember. So yeah, so I just felt like she deserved so much better than that. So yeah, So I loved Summer, Fairy, and General Winter. They at one point they were brother and sister. They were two separate beings, and after an accident, I think the sister's body died or something, but they ended up becoming part of one body. So in the day, General Winter has an ice cream shop, and at night, Summer Fairy runs a cocktail bar. And I think she ultimately ends up sacrificing herself, which I thought was really sad. Because how do you get over having somebody be a part of you for like thousands of years, and then now they're not, they're just gone? That's so sad. And then of course there's the idol trainee who ends up being possessed by the Jade Dragons, the second prince, which is absolutely hilarious because it's a guy possessing a woman's body. So what does he do when he's possessing a woman's body? He keeps trying to like touch himself. And PK's like, stop trying to touch yourself. That's disturbing. And he keeps like trying to hit on like all the hot women. I shouldn't say hot women. Keeps trying to like hit on all the women in the agency, which is really funny. But yeah, like I know. Also, like was really hoping that there would be a second season, even though I know there's not going to be a second season, because it basically ends with Sun Ogong going to the underworld to look for Sun Mi. Because at one point he'd given her a piece of himself or a piece of his eye so that he would it basically went into her eye or whatever. So like he would always be able to find her no matter what. So I thought it'd be really cool if there was a second season and it could chronicle his adventures in the underworld of him trying to find her. Or, you know, I came up with my own ending, and that was like that she'd be reborn, and of course she remembers them, and her mom like ends up taking her to Mom Wong's penthouse one day, and she's like talking about all these people, and the mom is like, oh my god, like I'm so sorry, like I don't know. She talks about like knowing this place and all that stuff, and oh, she has to wear an eye patch because people are afraid of her eye, because when the eye patch is lifted up, you can see the reflection from how her eye is different because of Sun Ogong. So I just like thought of that ending and was like, that's so much better, because then she can go back and re-meet them, and yeah, whatever. I know. Anyway, so I love this story and I've watched it numerous times, and it's in my top 5. So in episode 4, I'm going to be talking about a show called About Time. It's about a woman who is a musical theater actress, and she can see basically people's life clocks and how much time they have left on their lifespan. So if you want to be notified of any new episodes I'm uploading, then hit the notification bell. And if you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button. See you next week.